Welcome, everyone, and happy Wool Month. My name is Matthew Rowe, and I'm the CEO of the Campaign for Wool in Canada and its parent organization, the Canadian Wool Council. The Campaign for Wool was started, as many of you know, 11 years ago on a windy pier in Pictou, Nova Scotia, by Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla. The campaign is His Majesty's initiative to educate consumers on the wonders of wool, and is the primary program of the Canadian Wool Council, the only national organization representing the entire wool industry from producer through to consumer. Our mission, of course, is to enhance and develop opportunities for Canadian wool and the Canadians who transform it. Our work is guided by the Wool Plan, which I mentioned at all of these events. Which, again, if you really want to do a deep dive on our industry, it's available on our website. It outlines the whole structure of what guides our work over these past few years. It's really centered around three main goals, which is to rebrand and revalue Canadian wool, to connect the entire Canadian wool industry at all levels, and to give Canadian wool a voice on the international stage. It was on that international stage not long ago that we had today's guest, Lindsey Weber, join us as part of the largest Canadian delegation at the International Wool Textile Organization Congress in Lille, in France. And I'm sure she'll be speaking a little about that. Lindsey was part of our young professional contingent. Again, the largest that we've ever had. Oh, we had three young professionals as part of that group, and a really amazing opportunity for the people who are the future of our industry and who are doing some really interesting and exciting things. Lindsey is here with us to talk about her 100% Canadian wool felt geotextile, and how that is transforming agriculture and horticulture in this country, and a great application for Canadian wool. So, without any further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Lindsey. As always, as questions come up, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end of the presentation, and you'll have the opportunity. We'll go through sort of the printed questions, but we'll also have a chance to for you to put your hand up and ask Lindsey personally. It's always nice to see your faces and learn a bit more about where you're coming from and your interest in the wool industry. So, without any further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Lindsey Weber to tell us more about wool in geotextile. Lindsey.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that great introduction. So yes, like Matthew said, my name is Lindsey Weber. I am located in London, Ontario, so southwestern Ontario. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my connection between farming, manufacturing, and how I got into wool and really how all of these things kind of came together to sprout the idea of WoolGrown. I can't see my slide, so hopefully you're on slide 2 there. Perfect. Yeah, transforming Canadian wool into the future of growing. If we could go to the next slide. So these are the areas that I'm going to touch on, really my background, my passion for doing creative activities, research and development is something I really enjoy doing. Why wool, research and collaboration, and then, of course, the future of WoolGrown, what that is and where it's going in the future. If we go to the next slide. So my background is agriculture. I grew up spending a ton of time at my grandparents' house. And when I was a kid, they had retired from farming probably 3 times, starting with dairy, going to beef, pigs, and then they did sheep for quite a number of years. And since I was there a lot, I helped my Opa do a lot of the chores. We would market our lambs, and my Oma was a huge avid knitter. She did not use the wool that was produced on farm, but she made a ton of sweaters, of which I still have and my kids wear today. So growing up in that environment, sheep were something that were always of interest. They're just a really neat livestock to have. They're fairly simple once you get your system down. So that was something that I wanted more. It wasn't until we were able to move on to the home farm in 2020 that we started our small flock, and it's gone up and down in size since then. Along the way, I also went to Guelph University. I kind of merged my two interests of local farming and local manufacturing. Part of my background with the manufacturing is my family has started a mid-scale manufacturing business in the 80s. They did a lot of custom development work with regular everyday products that at the time were cutting edge, using a lot of post-consumer recycled plastic in products and things like that that weren't really seen on the market at that time. They've pivoted a lot during the years, but a lot of our focus is still on manufacturing everyday goods in markets such as health and beauty, hobby and craft. And part of my education and being in different manufacturing positions and jobs throughout the years, I've always looked at what our raw materials are, what are the building components of everyday items, and how we can translate those things into either a better way of doing it, a more eco-friendly way, recycled materials, repurposing applications, and that kind of thing. So I've done a lot of research and development work in repurposing and reutilizing materials, especially raw materials that are in our everyday products. So that kind of goes along with the entrepreneurial background. Like I said, we've done different avenues in different industries throughout the years. So when I did get sheep, one of the first things was obviously we have to shear them for their health. And I got all this wool. So I started really experimenting and seeing how much you're able to process, where the wool goes, what it's usually used for. And most of the talks that we're used to on this series really focus on the traditional avenues of weaving, yarns, textiles, home goods. But I quickly realized, even with my own wool at times, it's not going to be that quality, right? Maybe it's a little bit too short, maybe there's too much vegetation in it, whatever reason that doesn't suit those industries, what do we do with that wool? Of course, we can do a lot of handicrafts, and the craft and art market is quite substantial. But I wanted to see, even though all of the wool isn't destined to that, what else could we do? And then I just put a quote at the bottom. Ontario's manufacturing sector accounts for roughly 45% of the entire output. So being in Southwestern Ontario is a bit of an advantage there, since there's so much industry and there's so many diverse businesses that are producing manufactured goods. So we'll go to the next slide. So I really wanted to meet wool where it was at the moment. We can think about all of the things that we wish wool could be, or having a better clip, or improving those genetics, or whatever that might be. But I wanted to really look at where wool was now, what the quality was, what the market was like, and what could we use this wool for. So turning that challenge into an opportunity. But what was that opportunity? So like I said, I did a lot of hands-on work and a lot of research and development on what the natural properties of wool were. And if I think a lot of us are familiar with some of those, but we have temperature regulation, moisture wicking, moisture control. Obviously, it's a natural material, so it's going to be biodegradable. It's going to be circular in nature. So those are all great benefits that we could utilize from this raw material. And I positioned it as looking at it as a raw material from like an agri-food byproduct stance, which may or may not be looked at in that way, especially when we look at textiles. So throughout the work that I was doing, I wanted to utilize the natural material and take advantage of those natural properties. So we can go to the next slide. So like I said, it's biodegradable in nature, it's natural, moisture retention. Weed suppression was one that I was really interested in. And that's what sprouted the idea, I guess, because I love to do gardening, landscaping, all of those things. And when I moved onto the home farm, there was a lot of work to be done. And I know how much goes into starting a new plot or a new landscaping project. You want to prep that area as best you can, but you're always dealing with weeds. So I looked and said, okay, what's out there? What could be used instead? And I came up against a lot of your traditional plastic landscape fabrics. So think like your black fabrics that you see. And most of that if not all of it, is going to be some sort of polyplastic derivative of some kind. There are a few natural materials like coconut coir, but of course that you can't do that on a larger scale necessarily. And importing that is becoming a bit of an issue price-wise and all of those things that we're currently dealing with trade. So I started to experiment with the wool that I had and felting it and using it as a mulch. So I tried a bunch of different ways, and we were able to really formulate a material that was dense enough, that was thick enough, that still had some movement, that was easy to lay down. And then, of course, we looked at the wool that didn't make it anywhere else. So we'd be looking at qualities in the wool, like inconsistencies. A lot of what I use, which I can show in a minute, has a bit of hemp, sorry, and hair. So it makes it coarser and it's not desirable for really many other uses. So that's what we use as our initial run there. And you can see at the bottom, there's a few sample rolls, which vary in size. And since we're direct manufacturing of it, we can customize it to any shape or size. We can also do hole plantings, spacings, and that kind of thing for easy laydown and planting. So if you want to go to the next slide. So starting this, I positioned it as the landscape fabric for my own trials and use. And I was able to partner with different either research organizations or people that were interested in finding something that was, one, natural, and two, something that was locally made, which my product checked those boxes. So I got in touch with Ecological Farmers Association of Ontario, and through them, we were able to start a farmer-led research trial this spring at a local fruit tree nursery. So we're comparing the wool felt mats that we're able to make alongside raw wool and wood, just regular wood chips, and then a hemp mat as well. And we're coming up with some really interesting observations already. This will be a trial that extends into 2026. So we can see how it overwinters, what the degradation is like, how that potentially feeds and nourishes the soil as well as the plant itself. So it's really interesting to see that and speak to that farmer in particular ongoing with the trial. So that was one of them. There was another one that we're involved with as well that's looking at the wool-grown felt alongside the traditional landscape fabrics that I mentioned, like the polyplastics, and seeing what the comparison is like. Even from our own testing, it performs very similarly. Of course, it's not going to last nearly as long, but that's okay because we don't have the added problems of the microplastics and that sort of degradation that goes back into the soil, which is going to inevitably affect how we grow in the future, what our water is like, and how those plants uptake those potential hazards. So the research is ongoing. There's a few things that we have potentially planned for 2026, which I'm excited about to get more definite answers on the biodegradability, how long it lasts, because there's so many factors in growing, whether that be outside, inside in a greenhouse, or whatever, raised beds, if we cover it, all of these things. So I'm hoping to get some more definite answers, but so far it's been really positive on how it performs and what we are seeing in these trial runs. And I'm also looking at engaging some other partners to see more real world applications for that. So the future of WoolGrown. So like I said, we're expanding the research, testing various different trial plots and all of the variables that go into growing. We're exploring different markets, and Matthew touched on the fact that I was a young professional at the IWTO this spring, and it really informed and kind of solidified some of the ideas that I was already thinking about in the expansion of WoolGrown. In particular, the research around the carbon sequestration and the circular life cycle of wool on the sheep. as well as some of the manufacturing that's being used right now for repurposing some textile waste and that kind of thing. So I've been exploring all of the really the byproduct of wool as like I mentioned, the agri-food byproduct avenue of it and seeing all of the different waste from the manufacturing process and how we can reuse that and reutilize kind of this strong wool that's maybe a bit more campy and a bit more coarse. So we're exploring different avenues like that, but right now the focus is primarily on mulches and the wool felt for growing applications. And a little bit more from the IWTO, repurposing wool creatively. I think we get bogged down a bit with using wool specifically for textiles and yarns and that kind of thing. And yeah, it might not always be there. So the garden fabrics is something that I was really interested in looking at, and also kind of taking wool from that raw material and seeing what else we could use for home and lifestyle applications. And through the project, we're promoting sustainability, championing wool as a regenerative, biodegradable alternative for the synthetic materials. And of course, having it be a local natural material that we can use. So that's what I'm working on now. And we've also done some wool pellets, which I'm really happy to announce that has been taken on by Lee Valley Tools, which is a Canadian company that distributes all across Canada. They have a reputation for quality products, first starting in woodworking, and they have quite a large garden section. So I'm very excited to have the with the wool pellets as a mulch in their catalog. So I'll just show a few things. So here are the pellets. This is our packaging with WoolGrown. And then hopefully you can see some of the texture. So this is one of the mats that we're using at the base of the tree. So the tree or the shrub would go right here. And then maybe you can see some of that texture on the screen. So it's quite coarse. You can see some of the black hair and that kind of thing that's coming through. So this would be an 18 by 18 inch. We can also do a 12 by 12 or even larger. And then this is an example of one of the rolls that we have that has the pre-cut holes. And these could be offset. They can be pretty much in any width or dimension. The holes are roughly 2.5 inches, but that could also be customized as well. And then we do some growing pots. I've been using them for transplanting, starting cuttings, and especially trees. And at the end of the season, since it's biodegradable, we can just put it into the ground and it nurtures and provides a little bit extra moisture for those plants when we plant them. So that is my presentation, and I'd love to see what kind of questions everybody has and have a bit of a discussion on that. Oh, perfect. You
Lindsey, thank you so much. That's fascinating, and I think I so often I think when people think of horticultural applications for wool, the big trend right now is pellets, and this is so interesting. Like it really kind of takes it into it's similar, of course, but has so many other applications. I really found it quite interesting. I think we've got a couple questions. Um, oh, no, not yet. So please pop your questions in the chat about Lindsay's product, her journey, the excitement of Lil. You can maybe dive into that. That was quite a special opportunity of having you there as part of our largest ever Canadian delegation. And I think I mentioned this on the one of the previous calls, but I think it bears repeating that we made such a splash in terms of our presenters, our presence, our outsized impact at that event. When you think of it's not that long ago that Canada didn't even have a seat at that global table. We were very much absent from those conversations. And then in Lille, they actually, I'm not telling tales out of school, but the Americans actually complained that they weren't getting enough attention because it's like, whoa, well, all this stuff's happening about Canada. Why aren't we being featured in the same way? So it really shows how our presence we really punch above our weight, especially given our size, the size of our industry relative to some of these big global players. And Lindsay, you were such an important part of that, and really having the that largest ever youth component as well, which I think is obviously it's the future of our industry. Maybe we can start off by asking you a question about that experience, and what were some of the big takeaways that you had as a young professional at the IWTO in Lille.
Yeah, some of the takeaways. I was thinking about this the other day. Looking at how so many countries are so different. So we're so small and we don't really have a good marketing or traceability aspect to the Canadian wool industry. And seeing how some of the countries have this super in-depth and very detailed plan of how they market their wool, how they collect it, how it's completely traceable. And then also on the other hand, having a speaker I can't remember if it was from Norway or Sweden, and they had a similar industry to us where there really wasn't an industry anymore to market and to collect this wool and to sell it. And to listen to that presentation and to see what one person was able to do, connecting themselves with local producers, which is something that I've taken on with this project. It's just really inspiring to see the momentum go from making a few connections to making more connections, and then getting people excited about the fact that, hey, maybe my wool does have a value, and this could be that avenue. It was something that I really looked at providing and creating a value added good, whatever that might be. And this is what I landed on. So listening to those talks was really interesting. And listening to some of the current research that's being done in relation to wool, again, as that raw material, and looking at the keratin in it and how we could utilize that as a replacement to plastics in everyday household materials. That's something that's really interesting to me from a manufacturing standpoint. I don't have the capacity to look into it right now, but it's definitely on my radar to do. So those were some really big takeaways for me attending IWTO. It was a really amazing experience, and I still look at my notes and reference back to those things and see how those things can guide this business forward.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we'll have more information for those who might be interested in having a similar experience at future meetings at the end of the talk. And now I'd like to hand it over to one of my colleagues, Charlotte. Many of you know Lydia, of course, as the key driver of Spinning Yarn Speaker Series. Charlotte is a recent addition to our team and has been given the honor of helping to take us through some of the questions. So I'll pass it over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi, everybody. And thank you, Lindsay, so much for that wonderful chat. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, so maybe I'll go ahead with some of the first that came in. We have a
Charlotte, just before
question.
that, sorry to interrupt, but I see Diana has her hand up, so maybe we'll go to the camera first.
Sure, sure. Diana, would you like to go ahead with your question?
Hi, thanks so much. Lindsay, just to let you know, I'm with Farm Terrio, so you know you're speaking to a reporter, not just somebody who's interested in utilizing their wool. I'm interested of some of the challenge you maybe have run into, especially now with Lee Valley, of scaling up manufacturing to meet demand. I find that Canadians are so innovative, especially those who are trying to find value added. But some of the challenges are scalability and just not having access to the space or the machinery or the labor. So you seem ready to pretty much shoot up there. So do you have some concerns or have you found some solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's what I really focused on at the beginning because there is a lack of manufacturing capabilities and capacities in wool. It's either massive input and looking at these larger facilities and factories, or we're going down the mini mill kind of road and hand doing things. And that was something really important coming from that manufacturing background and understanding raw material leads, materials, time frames, looking at the equipment involved and what businesses were out there to make it scalable. That was one of my priorities going into this, is that it needed to be scalable from the beginning. So we were super fortunate where I'm located. I can pretty much get everything manufactured, picked up, delivered either by ourselves or somebody else in a 250-kilometer radius. So it lends itself to be able to be scaled. And we're really excited because we've done our initial run, and then the second run that we've done was 5 times the size, essentially, in the material that we used. So we have the capacity in the felt and, of course, the pellets too, to be able to scale and provide that volume.
Wonderful, thank you. So I guess we can hop over to the chat now if nobody else has raised their hand. Liz Peed asks, have you investigated the possibilities of adding colorants to the felt for landscaping?
I've looked into it a little bit. So part of my background is custom coatings as well. So it's a bit of a challenge to find a coating or a dye that's natural that we could do at scale on some of these things. There's a few things that I'm hoping to bring out in spring next year that will have maybe some color coded, some wording and lettering and that kind of thing on it. From a craft and art perspective, you can definitely dye the material. I've had some people show me some really incredible things that they've done with it. I've done some natural dyes, and of course, you can do acid dyes on it. But I haven't explored it too much. I don't know right now if it's something that I want to get into too much, but I think for a few specialty projects next year, we'll definitely be incorporating some of those into it.
Wonderful. Julia Lee asks, I would be interested to learn a bit more about the felting machine that you use. How clean does the wool have to be?
So with any of this, it has to be completely washed and scoured to be able to felt it. You wouldn't be able to use like a raw material or anything like that. So everything that we use is washed and ready to card and comb and put through the felter. I don't have the felting equipment. I hire that out to be done on a larger scale.
All right, thank you. Nancy asks, how does the wool compare price-wise with the currently used plastic?
Great question. I get that a lot. And I mean, there's going to be a difference, no question about it. We're looking at something that is basically a derivative of the oil and gas industry, which is probably much cheaper as a byproduct compared to the wool, which involves multiple steps, transportation wise, washing, all of these extra variables that go into it. So we also have to think and keep in mind too, is what is the unseen costs of using the plastic versus using the wool. And there's more and more research coming out all the time with the microplastic leaching and how long it stays in the soil and it doesn't break down. And then even research of it going up into the plants and all of these things. So I think it's important to keep in mind those aspects as well. Again, with price. So thank you for that question.
There is wondering about any early learnings or hypotheses on pest suppression or pest harboring, thinking of old-fashioned moths, although maybe less of a concern given the overwintering temperatures.
Yeah, good question. I know that slugs and snails just generally don't like the texture of wool since the material is barbed. On like a microscopic level, the texture of the wool is barbed, so they don't want to go over it. I haven't seen any pest damage. I've had a lot of questions from people about vole and mice, which again, I haven't found outside. I really haven't seen any moths either. That's something that, one, it's outside, so I might not be able to see that necessarily. So no, I haven't really seen too much pest damage. The only thing that I did find was when I did put some raw wool out, of course, my dog went into it. But as soon as it was washed wool or the felt, he didn't care about it.
All right, very interesting. Mary Eve Michaud asks, are you able to create some of your own products or is everything hired out?
So I create a lot of my own configurations with the cutting, all of the slitting, all of the different patterns that we can do for planting. That's all done in-house. We have different die sets that we can use and that kind of thing. The pellets we also do in-house, so we have the capacity to create pellets on scale in production. And then all of the pots that I make, I do those all by hand, and those are sewn just with a cotton thread. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Very nice. I see another hand up from Diana Martin. Diana, you can go ahead if you'd like.
I'm just curious, and I apologize if I missed it earlier in the conversation. How much wool is required for, I don't know, like a pound of pellets? I don't know how to weight wise the pellets or the felt. And I guess how do you see this basically providing a value added option once you sort of start to scale up and go outside your own production?
Yeah, so the pellets is pretty much what you put in is what you get out. There might be a little bit that you lose on some of the grease, I guess I would say, and some of the moisture in the fleece. Since when you do it, it does get quite hot and steamy. But you really don't lose much of your weight material-wise when you're pelletizing. Turning it into felt, that's a bit of a different story. It's going to be affected by since I have a lot of kemp in the wool that I'm using, a lot of hair, that affects it. There's breakage. It's not always the same length, which again, when it goes through the carder, there might be some additional waste there, and we're kind of blending it to optimize that. So it's hard to say how much I'm losing, but on average, you would lose 50% of your weight just in washing and scouring, and then anywhere between 20 or 10 to 25, 30% in carding. And that's pretty standard, I'd say, for most production, depending on application and depending on the wool that you put in. So it really depends, and I'm not really able to say how much when I put in what I get out. It depends per run, essentially.
So I have a follow-up question then, because that's very interesting to me to learn more about the carding and how it creates its own waste, quote unquote waste. Do you use that particular waste for the pellets then? Or do the pellets have to, you know what I mean? Like, are there ways for you to reutilize things that aren't good for felting?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that we're actively working on right now, not for the pellets, but maybe for potential other applications and other research that I'm doing. Like I mentioned, the keratin. That's something that I'm interested in pursuing, and it would probably be easier. Maybe, I don't know, I haven't looked into it too much with a washed and processed material already instead of a raw material. So there's things like that on all stages of the manufacturing, even when we get into textile waste too, right? Like all of those offcuts and all of the pieces that didn't make it into our garments. Where does that go? So that's an avenue of reusability and recycling that I'm definitely looking into.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. We have a few more here in the chat. Vanessa Randall asks, could you tell us the story of how you got the beautiful great wheel behind you?
That is a great question. This has been in our family as long as I've been alive. My dad is an avid antiquer and he loves to do woodworking. So he fixed up this wheel, and I've never actually used it. I just thought this room that I'm in right now is such a cozy space, and to have it behind me was really nice. I've never used it. It's something that's on the list of things to try. I did have like a smaller antique, just regular spinning wheel that I've experimented with, but not so much with this one.
Great. And then one more question from Mary-Eve Michaud. What breed of sheep are you mainly using?
So it is pretty much any sheep. It doesn't have a breed specific. It's really a lot of the wool that I'm using is like Rito Arcot, Dorset, there's Romanoff and other hair type breeds in the mix, Dorsets as well. So it really runs the gamut. It's not going to be breed specific because a lot of our producers, depending on the avenue that they've decided to go with, raising lamb, it depends. It really depends. So it's mixed. It's mixed. And I usually say it's just strong wools that don't have a purpose for your traditional areas. So a lot of different breeds mixed in one.
Thank you. It doesn't look like we have any other questions for now. Maybe we could do a final call if anyone wants to pop anything in the chat or put their hand up. Um,
We do certainly have, once we get all the last questions in, there are quite a few things to update you on for Wool Month. So, but we still have a lot of time, so we'll get to that at the end.
we have another hand up from Diana Martin. You can go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to hog, but um, how important is it to, I'm not sure how to phrase this. When you're a producer and you have a vision, how important is it to have mentorship or access to resources that help you turn that idea into reality? Because it seems to me that the way forward is utilizing that knowledge, that spark from grassroots.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say everything that I've done at the beginning is for sure grassroots. All my research and reaching out to people that were in these different spaces, maybe not in the space that I ended up, but learning from what they were going through, what they were experiencing, how they were processing things was really important. And to make those connections and see what I could learn essentially from all these different people, which is what I did and incorporated it into WoolGrown. So it was quite grassroots and I'm still making those connections and I love to network with people and just talk shop about sheep and wool. And I think that's really what gets the conversations going and started and people get creative and that sparks new ideas as well.
Great. We have from Francois Garcia in the chat. They ask, can you talk about the keratin and what you use that for?
So I can't speak too much to it, but there was a presentation at the IWTO where they were essentially able to harness that keratin, which is a compound in the wool itself, to be able to use it as almost like a plastic alternative. That work is still ongoing, and I don't know if there's anything published as of yet on it, but it's an interesting concept to be able to use that building block material as a replacement to plastic. I'm always so interested in, like, from the manufacturing side, how plastics are so prevalent in the products that we use every day, and finding something that had the ability to be scaled and to be used in that way. Of course, we're never going to be able to compete volume wise with all your petrochemicals and plastic derivatives, but to have the option of using wool, a natural material, as a replacement is something that's super interesting. So yeah, that's I don't know too much. I don't have specific information, but that's what I do know.
Thayer asks, how can we support furthering this initiative? I'm not sure if they're talking specifically about the keratin applications or your initiative as a whole, but maybe you could speak to both.
Yeah, I always try to post as much as I can on social media. Um, I mean, being supported that way and through the purchase of our products is always great. Everything that I do so far has been self-funded in except for like a few things like ecological farmers all my other research and development has been self-funded so far. Um, so I mean, just spreading the word, having those conversations with people, hey, did you know this exists? And trying it out and seeing if it works for you and what kind of experiences you have, whether that's using it in the garden or using it more in an arts and crafts kind of avenue. That's always nice. I always like to hear from people and show me their work and show me how it worked for them. That's always great to get supported by.
Awesome. And then from Susan, we have, do you use llama and alpaca wool as well for mix?
No, I don't. I've kind of experimented a bit with using it in pellets. It's a bit harder since it's a drier material. I still have to mix the wool and that kind of thing. But I haven't tried it as far as felting. I think I would need a pretty large quantity in order to mix it in with the wool. But I mean, that's an option as well.
Wonderful. I think that's all the questions that we have so far. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for answering all of those. Matthew, I'm not sure if you want to go ahead with some of your
Sure.
updates.
I think there was, did we get the furthering initiative question in?
Yes, we did.
Oh, sorry, I zoned for a second. Fabulous. Well, wonderful, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Lindsay, for sharing this incredible work. We know firsthand, that these things are a labor of love, and but they're also, as one of our board members says, a labor of labor, and so there is so much that goes into these things, and so thank you for following your passion and sharing it with us, and we wish you all the best in your business ventures, and hope that we can support that work going forward and find ways to amplify and enhance what you are doing. We have a few updates. Of course, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, this is Wool Month. This is our highest of high holidays, and so there's a lot of activity going on across the country. I wanted to go through a couple of the different initiatives, as well as events, because we've got some invitations for you, as well as some opportunities to get materials to support your business, and even to qualify for a $10,000 prize. So it's a pretty action-packed month. I guess the two top things, again, relevant to those of you on the call who have your own wool business or who sell wool products. As always, from the very beginning, Campaign for Wool has provided complimentary retail point of sale kits, that we mail out every October. These include tags, signage, again, some examples of previous years. This year, the message is check its wool. Again, referring to encouraging consumers to look at the labels, because even sometimes when wool is mentioned on a tag, you'd be often shocked at the percentage. And so we want people to be able to look at their labels, know what they're buying, know what they're wearing, and of course choose natural fibers, and in particular choose wool when buying clothing. We very much espouse a value of, buy less but buy better, and choose well-made natural products that are going to stand the test of time. And obviously, I don't have to convince anyone on this call that wool checks off all those boxes. So those point of sale kits are available. As I talk, Lydia is going to pop in some links, so you can order things up or get the information as it comes. So that's the point of sale kits. The Innovation Prize, this is the second year that we're running the Canadian Wool Innovation Prize. This is in partnership with the Worshipful Company of Woolmen, which is the world's oldest wool guild in the UK, going back to the 12th century. They run an Innovation in Wool Awards for the British industry. Our prize is obviously for Canadians, and people using Canadian wool and transforming it into really innovative products. You may remember from our previous spinning yarns, one of the co-winners, General Bean, who made these amazing needle felting kits, as well as from our Fabric of Canada film, Wool of the West, which featured the other co-winner, which was the F10 Ultra saddle pad, which is 100% Alberta wool felt pad that used for the equestrian market. So that innovation prize, $10,000. Applications are open now. Encourage you to submit if you've got an innovative wool product. Please do submit. Again, I know that especially when you're ramping up a new idea, $10,000 can come in real handy. So please do apply, and we hope to share the winner of that prize with us at our upcoming conference, which I'll get to in just a moment. I'm also pleased to debut our just today our new Holt Renfrew Canadian Designer Capsule Collection. This collection, as for many years, is all Canadian designers. This year we have several both made in Canada and full product of Canada Canadian wool pieces, including a beautiful 100% Canadian wool tote bag available now. We have two invitations. I'll pop in a moment. For those of you close to either Toronto or Vancouver, there's going to be an event this Saturday at Holt Renfrew that you can drop in. There'll be special gifts given for anyone who buys from the collection on that day, as well as one of the pieces is actually a beautiful Canadian-made wool coat, varsity-inspired jacket, and they'll be doing custom patches and stuff in store, so you can perfect for Christmas. And as always, a portion of every purchase goes back to support our work. So hence our incentive to encourage you to go to Holt Renfrew and buy some bags and coats. We also have another staple of Wool Month that you've probably gotten used to over the years has been the Fabric of Canada films. We have two new Fabric of Canada films that will be rolling out this month. As always, they'll be rolled out on social media, as well as we've got some in-person events as well. I'm going to give you a sneak preview as our loyal followers. The two films this year, one will cover is set in New Brunswick and covers the story, of course, of the iconic Briggs and Little woolen mill. It's called Wool Generations, and looking at that multi-generational family enterprise. Briggs has been a loyal supporter of the campaign for wool from the very beginning. We really love having them as a partner, but now we get to learn a bit more about them and their operation and sort of see inside their mill in New Brunswick. So that's one of the pieces. The second one, which will actually be the first to be released next week, confusingly, will be it's called The Wool Keepers of Saskatchewan, and it will profile Saskatchewan sheep producers, makers, mills, and artisans. And it's a really sweet story. We were editing recently, and both Lydia and I couldn't really, usually these films are about 5 minutes. This one's about 8. We couldn't cut anything because it was so good. The stories are so heartfelt, and what really comes through is, again, the beauty of the landscape, those enormous prairie skies that are just so gorgeous, and how that inspires many of the makers in that province. So really looking forward to sharing those pieces with you in the coming weeks. In terms of events, as I mentioned, the Holt Renfrew this Saturday, we'll be popping that in the chat. The next big thing is, again, inspired by our experience at the IWTO, including Lil and of course hosting a couple years back the first ever international meeting in Canada, in Montreal. I remember being at that meeting in Montreal and looking around the room, and we had 26 Canadians there, and we thought, well, we've never actually had 26 industry people in the room for anything, and so it's certainly for this kind of event. I mean, we've had it at media launches and things like that, but having that kind of focused educational program, it struck us that that was something special and something that we wanted to really bring to Canada and bring with a focus just on the Canadian industry. So Canadian Wool Conversations is the result. It is taking place this on Thursday, November 13th, in Toronto at the Royal Winter Fair. So you can sort of double up in terms of participating in all the great events that the Royal has to offer as the world's largest indoor agricultural fair. It's also November being a good time to spend time indoors in Toronto. The weather is usually not lovely outside, but inside you'll find a plethora of sheep exhibiting, of wool exhibitions, of activities, of vendors, and our conference, which will be bringing together, as only Canadian Wool Council can, a really diverse group of representatives from that entire value chain, from producers to manufacturers, designers, retailers, putting them all together in one room for a really interactive and engaging a day of activity. We're working with, in addition to Lydia and Charlotte, we're working with Mary Richardson, that many of you may know, on ensuring a really substantive program, and you'll see many of the favorites from Campaign for Wool and from other partners from across Canada as well. But this is open to all and everyone. Again, we're very conscious to keep it accessible. We'll be feeding you. You'll get a nice lunch and snacks, but also a chance to really take a deep dive into the strategic issues that are facing our sector. And this is also going to be sort of the first of a series of initiatives to develop the next iteration of our wool plan, which expires next year. So if you want to really have a voice in shaping that, I would encourage you to get yourself to Toronto on November 13th to participate in that conference. Lindsey was talking about her great experience at the IWTO. Again, this is something unique that we provide as being the holder of Canada's seat at the global table. This really is the chance to learn from the global industry and also many of the other countries similar to ours in terms of scale that are facing similar challenges and are tackling it in different ways. So there's 2 meetings a year. The next meeting, which will be from November 25th to 26th, is quite an exciting one because it's taking place in the mountain kingdom of Lesotho in southern Africa. That would involve flying to South Africa, to Johannesburg, and then connecting on. So it's not close, but if you're looking for, South Africa is actually one of the largest wool producers in the world. They're second only to Australia for fine merino production. So they're very important to the global fashion industry. And so we'll be learning both about the local Lesotho industry, which also has a very big wool industry and textile manufacturing, and the wider South African industry. So if you are interested in that, please get in touch with us so we can help you to secure the preferential member rates to be able to participate. I think I covered everything on that. But yeah, quite a lot happening in Wool Month. As always, if you have any questions about our work, about any of the activities, or how you can get involved, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, Lydia, or Charlotte, and really hope that we can see many of you in Toronto on November 13th. Thank you again, Lindsey, for taking the time to speak with us. And thank all of you for giving up your lunch hour to chat wool with us. Remember, Spinning Yarn Speaker Series was created for you to give you a deeper insight into our industry and the work of the Canadian Wool Council and the Campaign for Wool. So a very happy Wool Month to you all, and wishing you the best for the rest of the year. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Spinning Yarn Speaker Series. Thank you again, everyone.